looks like you're just going fucking warp speed. Oh, what? What the fuck? Hold on a minute. What was that? So you can't kill what you can't hit, right? Moving too fast, supersonic even, blink and he's gone. Unless, of course, he keeps crashing into stuff. Face first into walls, face first into objects, forehead first into enemies, off the edge of cliffs. I mean, there's no end to it. It's like being caught outside in the rain with no umbrella. My mate once told me that if I ran fast enough, the rain wouldn't hit me. Of course, he lied, but it's okay because he wasn't fast enough to run away from my boot. Now, running into stuff is kind of Gauss's thing, right? You know, what's your superpower? Oh, I run really fast into stuff. I cause impact damage and I ragdoll enemies around whenever I smack into something really quickly. Not to mention the slash effects that I bring with it as well, making enemies bleed slowly. So yes, this is Gauss, our newest Warframe added into the game with the Saint of Alta update, along with his 2 signature weapons. But how good is he, and more importantly, is he fun? And will he replace Volt? You see a lot of rip Volt things. Replacing Volt honestly is a big fat no. His playstyle is completely different, so you can relax with that nonsense. So far I am enjoying him. He is pretty tanky and has a nice amount of variety with his abilities to be fun. Movement speed, damage absorption, crowd control kind of bits of it, and damage boosting your weapons with his Redline ability make him really enjoyable. But you can make your own decisions yourself whenever you get your hands on your own Gauss. Now, running into things at times can be annoying on certain tile sets, a lot of tile sets, with the really short corridors or narrow hallways where you keep kind of running into objects because of that Mach Rush ability. If you're out on the plains of Eidolon or on Orb Valis, then of course you're not going to worry about running into things as much as you would in tight Corpus or Grineer ships. And out there in the wild, he is of course awesome. Now, you can buy his blueprint in the market for credits, and to farm his other parts, you need to run the new Disruption mission node on Sedna. This mission node is called Kelpie, and tier C of this is where all of his parts will drop for you. Now, if you're unsure about Disruption and which tier rewards what when, then have a look at this. Helmet, chassis and systems all drop on that tier C, okay? So happy farming. Ability wise, Gauss's passive is his battery. It's a secondary resource which is used for abilities and of course ramping up damage output or damage mitigation depending on how much you have on that speed gauge. It's the gauge on the bottom right of your screen right now above his abilities. Simply moving around will increase this meter, and his batteries will recharge 80% faster depending on how high that battery meter is already filled. Now, Gauss's first ability is called Mach Rush. You're basically a NASCAR. You can sprint at incredible speeds in a straight line, and you can turn ever so slightly left and right, but in an open area like a plains or an Orb Valis, you can make good use of this and run in a circle if you want to. Crashing into things with Mach Rush will cause a shockwave of impact damage that will ragdoll or knock down nearby enemies. It is pretty good crowd management, and you will find yourself using this a lot because you kind of have to build that meter back up. Now, his second ability is called Kinetic Plating. This will allow Gauss to absorb incoming damage types and turn them into energy at the cost of his battery meter. So when you take damage with this active, it will drain his battery and give you energy in return. It's basically a built-in rage or hunter adrenaline with a bit of balancing involved. So with Kinetic Plating active, it will also give him damage reduction based on the amount of battery level that you currently have. So your battery will be draining from incoming damage, which will increase the damage in turn that you take. But moving around and using Mach Rush will increase that battery level back up. So there is a lot of balancing involved if you want to build, I guess, a tanky damage mitigation build. And if you find yourself in a high level mission surrounded by a lot of enemies, then you can expect that battery to get drained pretty damn quickly. Now, Mach Rush and Kinetic Plating have got synergy with one another. Running into enemies with your Mach Rush while Kinetic Plating is active, will cause a bleed effect. It will spread a slash effect to enemies that you run through. Enough to wipe out trash. It's not a huge amount of damage, but it will kill that trash. His third ability is called Thermal Sandow, and this ability has a hot and cold function. Simply tapping the ability will cause a cold effect in a radius around you, which affects enemies and shrinks. The radius will shrink over time. Duration will slow that shrink down if you want to build for it. Tapping the ability a second time, so you tapped it once, now you're going to tap it again, will freeze enemies solid. So if an enemy is already affected by a cold status, when you hit that ability again, it will freeze them in place. But if you choose to hold the ability down and charge it, then it will cause a heat effect in a radius around you instead of that cold. Charge it a second time and it will inflict even more heat damage over time to enemies caught with that effect. On top of that, if you have an enemy affected by either hot or cold, and you cast the opposite effect on them, then those two effects will combine together for blast damage. So if you tap it once for cold, enemies get affected by that cold status proc, and then you charge the ability for heat, watch them get blasted onto their ass, basically ass blasting. Now it's a decent amount of damage, and it's a solid amount of crowd control as well. Now his ultimate ability is called Redline. This is where you will literally put your Gauss into overdrive, which will buff his abilities, increase his fire rate, his attack speed, his reload speed. He'll have a faster reload speed, and his weapon holster speed as well. These buffs all scale off duration mods, by the way, not off power strength, so make sure and build for that or allow for that. More duration means better buffs. Once your battery increases above that red line, which is the rounded bit of the battery meter on your UI on your screen, then bolts of energy will leave your Gauss and seek out enemies and explode on impact. Again, if you're looking to increase your battery level up to that 100% mark, way above that red line, to get the most out of your ultimate ability, then you're going to need to move as much as possible. So using Mach Rush as often as you can, or smacking into objects, will increase it faster than anything else right now. With Redline active, your Mach Rush will cost 50% less energy, so you can spam it a little bit more in order to increase that gauge. Redline in combination with your Kinetic Plating will also increase your melee damage. Also, when Redline is active, his Thermal Sandow ability won't need that second cast to freeze enemies in place or set them on fire, dealing more damage over time. It basically cuts out that first cast. Like I said, you are in overdrive. Also, while Redline is active, that blast effect from combining the hot and cold of Thermal Sandow will strip enemies armor. I'm not sure how effective this is. I tried it with a near 300% power strength build and they died before I could strip the armor off them, unless maybe it scales off duration instead. Now Gauss is a really mobile frame, and like I said, a pretty tanky one as well if you want to build for one that's really fucking hard to kill. His Kinetic Plating is really useful, especially with your battery gauge filled up, if you can keep it balanced, like I said. And when you go ahead and stick mods like Adaptation onto him, which is an incredible mod, he becomes much harder to kill. His crowd control from that Thermal Sandow is also pretty nice if you're caught in a tight spot, and it does scale off duration and range in terms of it shrinking and how large of a radius you want to affect. So you can build him for that either if you want. You can have a Gauss built for crowd control, entirely up to you. The actual burn, the heat effect from Thermal Sandow feels more powerful than Ember, so maybe it should be Rip Ember and not Volt. But Gauss's abilities are a mix of Volt's kind of mobility, Frost crowd control, I guess, Ember's damage over time, and the buffs are very similar. The buffs from Redline are very similar to that of Wisp or even Harrow. I guess that's the way I would look at him right now. He's a mix of abilities that other Warframes already have. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or not. Let me know in the comment section below. He is a really fun Warframe to use. I'm not going to deny that he is really enjoyable to run with. Whether I'll use him a whole lot, I'm not sure. Whether I'd build him for an Umbral build, I'm not sure either. But when it came to modding my Gauss, this is how I went about it for the footage in this video. I basically focused around duration, efficiency, with a bit of power strength mixed in there as well. And adaptation, of course, to keep the fucker alive. Now, I'll probably put another forma on him and remove that rush mod for either Cunning Drift or Power Drift. I'm not sure whether I will or not, or which one of those I will put in. But hopefully this video helped you maybe better understand Gauss the speedy boy. Do me a huge favour and hit that like button if you enjoyed the video, or don't if you didn't. Subscribe for more Warframe, and as always, thanks very much for watching.